So I'm going to go through the process of modeling and texturing this suitcase. Let's bring that over a little bit smaller. So one of the things I do is I start off by just making a simple cube, and I subdivide it down the middle like that. And then I just go ahead and shrink the height. Let's go to our front view. Scale that out a little bit. And I begin with the basic shape of the suitcase, like that. I'm going to hold D and X and snap that to the bottom. Let's hit F to focus. So I just start off with the basic underlying shape, and I unwrap that. I unwrap one half of that. And then I bring that in and I start the texturing process. So I'm going to go ahead and do delete half here. I'm going to unwrap this half. So edit. I'm holding spacebar here. Delete all by type, history, and then space, and I'm just going to freeze the transformation. So it's like this. Now let's go to our UV editor. Now, one of the tricks, here, let's kind of bring this over, to unwrapping is looking at the overlying shape. So because I'm doing this bottom part here, I'm going to leave that towards the bottom. And because I don't necessarily care too much about the bottom face, I'm going to give that less room in my UVs. This is more of a games approach versus a film approach. So if you're ever in a job interview and they look at your unwrap and they're kind of like, well, why did you make everything the same size? Um, if you've done that with other models, just let them know that, if you were to redo it, you'd give less space to this if they ask you. So a trick is I want to give the predominant amount of room to the area that's facing the z-axis. So I'm going to select this face, and I'm just going to go around like, well, here, let's just start off. So I select everything, and I hold shift and right click, and I go down to mapping. And I primary map it on Z. Z is my front view. And right off the bat, you might be like, well, I don't really see it. Well, that's more of me just to sort of grab all of my faces or UVs, see how they're dotted, and just placing them in one area. Now I'm going to go to the face mode, and I'm just going to select these two connecting faces. So this is the front and the side. Let's hit 4 so you can see that. All right. See how I just have those. Then I'm going to hold shift again, and I'm going to go to mapping, and I'm going to map that on Z as well. Now in order to get that to unfold, I'm going to double click this corner one, and what you'll notice in here is notice that it selects all the UVs that make up those two faces. Now I'm going to go to unfold here, and I'm going to click unfold. And I'm going to pay attention to where that top edge is and where that front face is here. So I'll go to UV mode here, and there's a couple of different ways of rotating it. You can hit E and rotate it this way, or you can click something like this to rotate around. But always make sure that you're aware of where that is in relation to the world, right? So here's this edge. Now this face is pretty important because it's the side of our suitcase. So I'll give that a good amount of space. Another way of straightening out your UVs is, let's shrink transform for a second. Let's look at align and snap. I can click in this right corner and it'll bring it closer to the corner, but I want to straighten out my UVs. So if you click that, anything that's cube, it'll bring it in like this. So let's go a little bit smaller, and then let's click this so that we can snap it. Now notice I'm trying to keep it all into this area here. So I'm going to scale it down a little bit more and then snap that to the corner. Like that. Now as for the top, select that top, and because it's going on the y-axis, I'm going to go down to mapping, map on y. Select this top edge, shift right click, and then do move and so. Now notice that it screwed up my UVs. I mean, we could turn on this checker and you can see that. So one trick is I just double click it again and hit unfold, right? And let's bring that into the corner. So you'll notice it starts to straighten it out the more that let's turn that off so we can see that. It starts to auto shrink it the more edges that you select. So even if I click this for a second, it'll clean that up. Now for the bottom here, right? Do the same thing where I map it on Y. Now we don't know if this bottom face is flipped, right? So one way to do that is to turn this on. And if this face was flipped, let's flip that so you can see. Oops, that's the scaling it down. Rotate, here's flip. Doesn't look like it's letting me flip it, which is good. Normally, if you have the face inverted or flipped, it'll turn pink. All right. So inside of here, you'll notice that this heat unwrapping, if we move it around, it kind of tells you areas that could be trouble. So this corner piece here. So really, I'm shrinking the base of this down to about here because I have things like the handles and stuff I can add later. So I'm making that kind of small. And to help myself out here, just snap that to the side and bring it down. All right. Same thing with this guy. All right, now let's see what's left. You can see we have that last, let's hit 4 so we can see that. We have this last face over here. So, and again, I'm always paying close attention to, here's my Z, so we just have this back part here. And what we can do is the same thing as before, right? Like, considering that the back of the suitcase is really not that important. I mean, what we can do is just go ahead and move and sew that, so that it goes all the way across. Now this is what I was talking about, where you have faces that are flipped. Notice that it's red here. If you just double click it and hit your unfold button, it's got a pretty smart algorithm. Straighten those UVs. Let's unfold that again. Bring that down. And for me, as of now, this is an okay unwrap, right? Because I only have one half of the suitcase unwrapped here, so it's going to save me a lot of space. All right, same thing in here. I'm going to keep this plunged over here. Let's shrink that down just a little bit. Snap that to my bottom. And I don't mind a little bit of space on the sides just because of bleeding. Alright, so I'm going to delete all by type. History, I'm going to freeze transformation. Alright, now let's go ahead and mirror this. So mesh mirror. And we want to do negative on our x-axis. Oops, sorry, positive. And right now, I'm not really worried about merging those two sides, even though it merged it for me, because I need to do some editing for later. Okay, so let's take a look at just sort of some basics of Substance Painter and bringing this object in.